Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. I'm Mary Pettit, Senior Advisor to the Global Coffee Platform, and it's my privilege to welcome you to today's Learning and Dialogue session number 2, RegenCoffee in Action. We're very, very pleased that you're here, and we look forward to an excellent session. We'll just give it a few minutes while people continue to join. And again, thank you for being with us today. As people are joining, we'd like to do what we do for every GCP meeting, which is start with our antitrust agreement statement. Essentially, if anyone thinks the meeting is going into an inappropriate direction regarding discussion of pricing, let us know and we will change our course. And at this time, I would like to extend a special welcome to our GCP10 sponsors. Our sponsors are JDE Peet's, Nescafe Nespresso, and OFI. And through their support and vision, GCP as a platform is only going more strongly and only welcoming more members and more engagement. So we're very grateful to have your support, sponsors, and we thank you. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about today's meeting. We're very pleased to have with us some outstanding speakers, and I would like to introduce them via slide quickly, and then they will be coming on later to speak. We have Paul Stewart from Technoserve, Marcelo Buriti from Nestle, Justin Archer from Sucafina, Pedro Ronca from GCP Brazil, Agnes Johan from Rabobank, and as a presenter, our colleague Jeremy Lefroy from Cafe Africa, who is the chair of the GCP Technical Committee. We're truly delighted to have you here with us. And before we go into the rest of our meeting, I'd like to give you a little bit of an idea of our session flow. We're going to hear from our speakers, but even before that, we're going to have an opening poll to get an idea of people's experience levels with regenerative agriculture and coffee. Then we will be breaking into member dialogue groups, and we're going to encourage your active participation. And then after this session, we're going to send you a post-session survey for your input that will help us develop strategy going forward for GCP member collective action in regenerative coffee. So let's take a look at the GCP 10 Learning and Dialogue series. We are very, very happy to be welcoming you to the second session of the GCP 10 Learning and Dialogue series. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary. We're looking back on all that we've accomplished, and we're pivoting toward the future to organize a bright 10-year next step collective action initiative. The GCP 10 Learning and Dialogue series is a place where we align, we learn, we discuss, and we shape collective action for our next decade. In the first part of the series, we focused on alignment and foundations for GCP, and those include the Coffee Sustainability Reference Code, the Equivalence Mechanism, and the Sustainable Coffee Purchases Report. In today's session, we're going to focus on opportunities for GCP collective action to strengthen farmer prosperity and resilience through regenerative agriculture, and that's what we call GCP RegenCoffee in action. Coffee landscapes are under increasing pressure. We know farmers depend upon healthy landscapes for their livelihoods. We must explore key opportunities to advance sustainable coffee production while strengthening farmer prosperity and resilience. This is why GCP introduced the RegenCoffee guidance as a shared framework for regenerative agriculture and coffee. And this guidance was developed over 6 months with GCP member, partners, and experts, focusing on 4 primary areas: soil, water, biodiversity, and farmer livelihoods. Today, we are taking the next step to move from guidance to action at scale. And I'm very pleased to welcome our presenter, Mr. Jeremy Lefroy, Chair of the GCP Technical Committee, who is going to lead us through a refresher on RegenCoffee guidance. Jeremy, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Mary, and welcome to everybody. We are talking today about what has been done over RegenCoffee in the last few months through GCP, but really this is not something that's been started here. It's been going on for many generations in many parts of the world. What we were asked to do is, as GCP, to bring together, to lead some work on common definitions. So if we start with the need for global alignment, maybe we could bring up that first slide, please. So as we know, it represents an approach to farming that restores and enhances ecosystems, and all of those, and I imagine it's pretty much everybody on this call who's involved actually in coffee production in one way or the other knows the threats that we face, both from climate change, from decreasing biodiversity. I just recall, even in Tanzania, where I've worked for many years, that 20 or 30 years ago, if you went for a long drive, you would come back with your windscreen absolutely covered with insects. Now, they're almost clean. You don't see them around. And that's just one small indication of the challenges that coffee farmers are facing. So the challenges specifically in respect of regen ag are that there's fragmentation. There are quite a different number of approaches. There's a lack of some kind of common definition. And there's the risk that it'll just become a form of greenwashing, that people will claim they're involved in regen ag when in fact it's nothing to do with that, or it's only a small contribution to it. So GCP is trying to take a lead on global alignment, creating a common language for RegenCoffee. So the next slide, please. And I want to point out again, this is something that our members have asked us. It's not something that we have said, right, we're going to do this, even if there isn't a demand. This has been something that people have requested for some time now. So since, just a little bit of background in sector alignment, since 2016, through the work of GCP, and in particular the technical committee on which many of you have served and was previously led by my colleague and great friend John Schluter, we've had the Coffee Sustainability Reference Code, which has gone through 2 iterations. It convenes companies, producers, and NGOs in order to produce something that everybody can work with and can agree on. It doesn't pretend to be the final answer, but it's a baseline, in fact, more than a baseline for involvement in sustainable production. And what RegenCoffee does is it builds on this track record. Next slide, please. So the purpose is to establish a common language by defining a set of common principles based on baseline sustainability. And this is absolutely key. It's farmer-centric. A focus on defining common measurable outcomes of improving and enhancing soil health, water quality and quantity, biodiversity, and farmer livelihoods. I think all of us on this call would recognize that those, if not absolutely everything, encompass most of what we are most concerned about in a sustainable future for coffee production. So the guidance has been developed over the course of last year through desk research, and I want to thank the GCP team, and in particular Mary, for all the work that's done by this. As a technical committee, we've steered that, we've had some input, and the result was it was published in September 2025. And we're very grateful to JDE Peet's, Illy and Nestle for the support they gave to this. Without them, it would not have been possible. So thank you. Next slide, please. So what does it include? It includes the common definition for the sector, which I've already touched upon, a monitoring approach with a focus both on outcomes and practices. This is a really practical guidance. We're not interested in theory here. We're interested in what actually matters and makes a difference. So the practices and crucially the outcomes. and it provides overviews. And if you read the guidance, you will see a lot more detail on this in the 4 impact areas of soil, biodiversity, water, and resilient farmer livelihoods. Now, of course, these are not silos. They are very much interconnected. For instance, we know that soil with a much better structure can retain far more water, and hence has a great impact on that, as well as biodiversity. So these are all interconnected. However, it's been important to look at each one individually, as well as the connections between them. Next slide, please. And again, we're not there to set up something which competes with existing initiatives. There are some great initiatives out there. We'll hear from some of them later on today. We've got a few outlined there, not least Technoserves, and Paul will be speaking on that just in a few minutes' time. So this is not a matter of competition. It's not a matter of duplication. It's a way of let's come together. Let's see where we can have some commonality. So just to reiterate, this is not new, what we're talking about. It's something that farmers have done for generations, good farmers have done for generations, and people have been really concerned about for decades. It's outcome-based, and the global alignment that we seek builds on what is there. It's not new. And fundamentally, it is farmer-centric. What it is not is certification, yet another certification requiring an audit, and nor is it prescriptive. It leaves country level, it leaves countries themselves to determine which practices are best at their own country level. And final slide, please. Thank you very much. And here is the QR code for the webpage and the guidance. And I would really encourage you, I'm sure all of you have read it once or twice already, but I'd encourage you to refresh your memory of it as we take it forward. Back to you, Mary.
Jeremy, thank you very much. And we wish to thank you and all the members of the GCP Technical Committee for the outstanding work that's being done in collaboration with members to advance RegenCoffee. Now we'd like to go to our speakers and hear perspectives from the field, which seems completely appropriate on today, April 22nd, Earth Day. Our speakers are going to reflect with concrete examples from their experience and prep us for the dialogue to follow. We'll take a look at RegenCoffee Foundations for Farmer Prosperity. We'll hear why companies are investing in a regenerative coffee future. We'll hear about field experience, implementing RegenCoffee in practice, applying it in Brazil, and finally, financing. What are opportunities and challenges? So I'd first like to welcome Paul Stewart. Paul, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Mary, and I'm excited to be part of this great dialogue. As many of you have seen the report titled The Regenerative Coffee Investment Case that was published last year, that report showed that by adopting regenerative practices, over 3 million coffee farmers in 9 countries that were part of the study could increase their incomes by an average of 60%. And I think it's probably surprising to a lot of people that adopting regenerative practices can actually help farmers to increase their incomes. But for those of you who have worked directly with farmers to transition to regenerative practices, then you'd be surprised. We've seen many farmers achieve, much larger increases in incomes as a result of adopting regenerative practices, as their yields increase, their costs decline in many cases, and their farms become much more resilient to climate shocks. One farmer in Kenya who I visited recently, I think is a great example of this, a lady by the name of Joyce Wanjiku. And Joyce transitioned to regenerative practice adoption some years ago. She changed how she weeded her plot. She changed how she pruned her trees. She started producing compost for the first time. She planted shade trees on her farm, and she completely changed the way she fertilized her farm, the fertilizers she was purchasing. With the increased yields that she achieved, the lower costs, she was able to invest in expanding her farm. And today, she now produces 4 times more coffee than she was producing before she started adopting regenerative practices. Not only that, she's now actually one of the leading producers in her community, and she was elected the chair of her cooperative in her community. And Joyce isn't, an outlier in this case. When I was talking to Joyce, she was along with I met also with some other board members of her cooperative, and I asked all of the board members if they had experience adopting regenerative practices. All of them had actually graduated from a Nespresso program that we had partnered with them on, that trained farmers on regenerative practices, and all of the farmers announced that they had at least doubled their production. And we've seen this trend across many other countries. Now, it doesn't mean that all their problems are solved. Many farmers struggle with small farm sizes, increasing costs, but it is making a difference in many of these regions, despite the fact that many farmers continue to struggle to achieve a living income.
Paul,
Yeah.
this is encouraging indeed, and thank you for sharing this information with us. Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you give us a quick wrap-up statement, and then we'll
Yeah.
move to Marcelo?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually just going to wrap up just to say,
Great.
what the study that we'd mentioned and the experience on the ground really shows is that adoption of regenerative practices is the most effective investment to help farmers increase their incomes and become more resilient for the future. Thank you.
Paul, thank you. And I believe the TechnoServe study is available on the GCP website. And now I'd like to welcome Marcelo Buriti from Nestle. Marcelo, thanks for being with us today. We know that Nestle is making a substantial commitment to regenerative agriculture in coffee and across other products. What makes this commitment particularly important from your perspective?
Thank you very much, Mary, and thanks everyone. Glad to be here and be able to interact, participate in this event. Nestle, both from Nescafé and from Nespresso, but also across all the other agricultural ingredients that we source, we are very much engaged with regenerative agriculture. In coffee, we actually put regenerative agriculture in the driving seat of creating positive changes in terms of farmer incomes, in terms of lowering carbon emissions, and as a consequence of creating the conditions for better social aspects as well. So we're very much engaged in that. We're very excited about all the momentum that is happening behind regenerative agriculture across even the coffee sector. I mean, there are many more and more companies that are making commitments, it generates also some risks because the concepts they are not let's say the conceptualization sometimes it's incomplete. So we very much welcome the guidance that GCP put forward that complements very well other documents like the CIAT one and the TechnoServe. I mean, we are building this ecosystem of documents and of references points for the sector. But we also see a risk not only on the concept definition, but also on the ways that companies or NGOs or organizations in general would actually run their assessments of their value chains or of particular farmer groups, independent of who they sell their coffee to, because the risk of greenwashing and of losing credibility of the concept is not only about the conceptualization, but also on how things are attributed. And we are very keen to continue working with GCP in order to build this additional reference for the sector that would reinforce the foundations and the standards that can be used for assessing either a farm, a farmer group, or even a coffee lot being delivered somewhere to actually be qualified as coming from farmers adopting regenerative agriculture practice or practicing regenerative agriculture, based, of course, on the practice adoption as a first step. We're very keen to develop that with GCP and make it available for the sector. Very similar to the equivalence mechanism that was created already for the responsible sourcing programs. We see a big opportunity here to build something similar, separate but similar, to build recognition capabilities for tools, for approaches, for even certifications that are already out there. In order for them in order to avoid in order to ensure, let's say, that at least the basic elements and a strong foundation is there before anything is called regenerative or making reference to regenerative agriculture. As a final statement here, this is a big piece of work, but it would not end there, because it is also very important to develop the quite unique aspects of regenerative agriculture, which is the measurement of the impacts, the soil health, the water management, the biodiversity enhancement. All these need actually to be assessed as well from an impact approach. There's a lot of research going there. There is another opportunity to develop as well and to broaden, to create let's say like a one-stop shop to discuss and evaluate these points as well. But this will be a step two. This goes beyond the adoption rate of regenerative agriculture and looking at the practices again at individual farmer group or green coffee lot.
We're taking it a step at a time. A step at a time is the right way to go.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you, Marcelo. Common language and clarity leads to a level playing field. Thank you, Marcelo. Common language and clarity leads to a level playing field, which is important for all of our sector. And I'd like to move now to Justin Archer from Sukafina. Justin, Sukafina has been conducting field work with regenerative coffee agriculture practices. What key experience, insights, learning could you share from this work in the field?
Thanks, Mary. Pleasure to be here and share this with colleagues, of course. So yeah, Sukafina actually designed its own Regen Ag standard about 3 years ago. So I think we were one of the first to do such undertaking specific for coffee. And we've used this standard as a foundation to design a handful of projects that we've been working on for a few years now. I guess by the end of this year, we'll have something like 50,000 farmers in official Regen Ag projects around the world. You asked me specifically to discuss successes and barriers to adoption. I would say our experience with Sukafina is that Regen Ag doesn't scale because it's good for the planet. I mean, I think it's often discussed in terms of its environmental benefits, but it scales when it works for the farmer. And so I think 3 practical lessons from the field that I want to share with the audience here, which are very much sort of from the perspective of farm economics, are number 1, of course, is economics do drive the adoption, right? So Regen Ag in this sense is not just an environmental transition, it's really an economic transition. And I would encourage any company or organization working on Regen Ag to do at least a couple of things. One is to consider deploying a portfolio of activities, because as an example, doing things like planting trees for the sake of planting trees alone is in the short term a cost for the farmer, doesn't deliver benefit. But doing tree planting in combination with something like soil fertilization will deliver immediate benefit, which the farmers can tap into. At the same time, try and focus on initial activities that will drive real savings. So, for instance, we've had quite a bit of success in Vietnam with things like fertigation, where we can demonstrate practically that not only can farmers reduce the cost of inputs, but they can actually also, therefore, drive up savings. And in most cases, they can maintain or even sometimes even increase yield. So that's just an obvious payback the farmers will buy into straight away. I think core message on lesson number one is basically, if there's a short-term benefit, adoption will go up. If there's a delayed benefit initially, then I think adoption will lag somewhat. Second lesson is demonstration drives adoption as well. As we say, seeing is believing, right? And in Regen Ag, I think that's the difference between pilots and scale. In the case of Sucofina, we've set up over 150 Regen Ag specific demo plots around the world, where we trial very specific activities or bundles of activities which are around Regen Ag. We invite farmers to visit those plots whenever they want and draw lessons from that. So I think making these demo plots locally relevant, making the results locally relevant really does work. And we have records where we can count the number of farmers that visit these plots, and we see quite a bit of traffic going through these plots. So I think demonstration plots are very important to drive home the message. And if farmers see things they can believe and they can relate to, they will typically adopt them. I think the third lesson I want to share today is that incentives are often the real barrier. What I mean by this is we are asking farmers to take, in many cases, financial risks for a transition that benefits us as an entire industry, right? So there's, in a sense, there's a disproportionate allocation of risk vis-a-vis the benefits that we're all trying to take out from Regen Ag. So, maybe one party wants to reduce carbon emissions. One party is more interested in soil health and biodiversity, but actually what matters for the farmers is something sometimes very different. And we shouldn't pretend that these activities that we're trying to encourage don't have costs attached to them, right? So I think some of the barriers which I would identify on behalf of farmers when it comes to Regen Ag adoption are things like the upfront cost of these projects, the delayed returns. I gave some examples first up. Weak price signals. So in other words, not having a specific price incentive for the work that's being required. So really, core takeaway there is this is not really a knowledge challenge. It's really an incentive and risk allocation challenge. So I would say as a sort of concluding comment from our perspective, poor adoption is a lack of aligned incentives, I think, in many cases. And it's not a financing problem. It's not necessarily a knowledge problem. I think if we focus on solving the value distribution problem, i.e. making sure the farmers accrue a significant part of the benefits from Regen Ag up front, then I think we'll get high adoption. But without short-term incentives, I think we're at risk there. So and then finally, think about Regen Ag as a system or a package of activities. It's not just one driver. It has to be a package of activities, and I think that's the right way to go. So I will. As you can hear, my alarm is going off, so I'll stop there.
No, thank you, Justin. You're sharing an important priority for regenerative agriculture and coffee, and that is that it can be an extremely helpful risk management tool. So thank you for sharing your perspectives from the field. I'd like to invite Pedro Ronca from GCP Brazil. Pedro, GCP Brazil was deeply involved in developing GCP RegenCoffee guidance and has even taken the next step to contextualize it to the Brazilian origin by producing 7 elements of RegenCoffee for Brazil. Why was this contextualization needed, and why was the country platform the right actor for this work?
Thank you, Mary. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here and discussing this very interesting topic. Well, to respond to your question, I think first we identified the need for an alignment. Several stakeholders were working on regenerative coffee in Brazil and very interested on it, but speaking different languages, different concepts. So we did a 1-year process of getting the sector together and aligning on a common concept that we ended up and this resulted exactly in the 7 elements that you mentioned, Mary. And the 7 elements was an approach that we decided to take with these more than 60 stakeholders joining the process, first to get a common concept that was recognized by all, that is now even being used by some experts on regenerative coffee in Brazil as a reference. But besides that, the 7 elements, they bring a very practical approach on a step-by-step basis. I think I like it what Justin just said on the, let's say, the economic transition and the need for driving change, but also to show farmers and technicians that will help farmers to implement the practices. What is the step-by-step and what is the economic benefit farmers get to apply those practices. So I think the 7 elements, they bring this step-by-step process, starting with the soil, that is very important and many times is forgotten, especially looking at fertility in depth. That is something very critical for increasing the root system and increasing the resilience of the coffee plants also, especially that drought is our major cause of losses in the field in the last decade, let's say. So increasing the resistance for drought, also by organic matter and other practices, very linked to the day-by-day farmer approach. It's very important. And we are also using, Justin, as you said, the demonstration units. We have been partnered with the state of Minas Gerais and Espírito Santo. Both of them represent 70% of Brazil's production, to install demonstration units that are already being used. As last week, our colleague here, Eduardo Matavelli, was on the field on a field day with farmers on a demonstration unit to show the results for farmers and the benefits for farmers of using those practices. We have also demonstration units on irrigation for regions that are more dependent on water. And we are trying to show also and to get results from these demonstration units to show the importance of irrigation in some areas, and also to show the proper use of water. Sometimes farmers need to use less, sometimes they need to use more. So
Pedro?
to be precise. Yes,
Pedro, the 7 elements are very interesting and important. Where can we find them? Are they on the GCP website?
Yes, they are available. I think, yes, Angelica have shown the link, have shared the link here on the chat. And anyone can access it.
I'm going to encourage everyone to look at the 7 elements, and I want to thank you, Pedro, for your explanation of the challenges involved in bringing a platform together across an origin to really contextualize this work. And one thing that you are mentioning, which leads us to our next speaker, is financing this transition. How people can not only be mobilized to apply the guidance, but also what is necessary to incentivize farmers to participate in it. And so I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Agnes Johan from Rabobank. Agnes, financing the transition from conventional to regenerative coffee farmer presents challenges and opportunities. What are your reflections on key financing needs and priorities to enable this transition?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me participating in this webinar. So Rabobank, being one of the bigger agricultural financing institutions, we see the Regen Ag transition not as a marketing tool, but really it will become a license to operate, and it will ensure the resilience of farmers globally across multiple sectors. We are also aware of the risk of greenwashing, and so as a bank, we are very much involved in developing standards or looking at what is a right way of measuring it, because banks always look at the financial results when we finance farmers. Can they actually repay a loan? But sometimes you need to also, when you look at the financial strength of a farmer, you actually should take into account a kind of a classification system that also allows you to look at the climate resilience level or the the mitigating activities that this farmer undertakes, that should be embedded in the risk models, but it isn't just yet. Now, we are not doing it, and I think very few other banks have cracked this nut, but it's a process. Well, given that we are speaking about coffee farmers particularly here, I would like to just quickly touch upon the challenges when you finance coffee farmers, which are almost all, some exceptions there, small farmers. Well, there are some basic problems when you want to finance small farmers, right? They lack collateral. The land titles are often not there. The crop risk is relatively high. The farmers are physically far removed. So high risk, high cost, small tickets. Usually a lot of financial institutions in emerging markets are not desperate to finance coffee sector. Sometimes, through value chain partners, there's some working capital available, but that will not help these farmers to transition into regen ag practices, because if you look through the TechnoServe reports that I've read a few, you'll see that there will be some short-term financing, but there's also some long-term financing needed. So that will never come from value chain players. What I've read in the TechnoServe, because I'm not a coffee expert per se, I'm a banker, but what I read in the TechnoServe reports, and I looked at the Vietnam one, the Colombia one, as well as the Brazil for the Robusta sector. So they actually have 3 types of what they call investments. So one are investments, as in loans. The other one is income compensation.
Quais os programas de agricultura.
Could people please put themselves on mute? Thank you.
Am I
Please
unmuted
continue.
now?
Please
Yeah.
continue, Agnes.
Sorry, yeah.
Not you, not you.
I was muted, so I wasn't sure what happened here. And the third type of funding needed is technical assistance. Now, the investments are the only part where financial institutions will look into, right? So what would you need the funding for? So if we look at the regen transaction, or the regen transition, it's about changing things like cover crops, increased labor costs ultimately when you have higher productivity, but also investments that are required for machinery to make the manure, the compost, windbreaks, agroforestry systems, so putting in shade trees. So these are all investments that will take a while before they can actually result in a higher return or higher productivity. So whereas for some sectors where you have large farmers, these farmers are able to do it themselves because they've got a bit more income or some more funding capabilities. For smaller farmers, it will be very hard. So the risk is way too high for banks to step into that. So I looked into our Rabo Foundation that finances actually quite a lot of coffee cooperatives, and they never, ever finance farmers individually. They say they always run through cooperatives, because especially when you look to the long-term investments that are needed, right? Either the trees or the CAPEX, so the capital expenditure, so the compost infrastructure. If you want one single farmer to invest in it and then actually get it paid back, it's a really heavy financing burden. Whereas if you could share that infrastructure with multiple farmers, it becomes already easier from a repayment point of view. So I think that's one thing that we could perhaps take into account when we look at all these investments, like long-term investment needs. Can they actually be done on a group level? The second thing that our foundation, and I'll wrap up, Mary, did was to look at alternative income streams. So agroforestry, we can look at carbon credits, although it's very hard for smallholders, but that could increase their return. So what I wanted to wrap up is that financing is one part of the solution. It's not all. Right, the income missed because of the renovation, the technical assistance, those are all grant based. So you cannot look into banks, local banks, to support you on that. However, the whole sector needs to collaborate, because also NGOs on their own cannot drive the change. So we do need to meet each other somewhere and all bring parts of the puzzle. So I think banks have a role to play. value chain players have a role to play. I think the investment case becomes already easier if you have some kind of long-term commitment or some kind of roster commitment. I really would like to stay away from certification and premiums. Not sure if that's going to drive the needle, but I think collaborating around a coffee ecosystem in a certain country, I think that will drive change and that will make it scalable. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. We're certainly seeing that start to coalesce in Brazil. And you transition us really nicely to the next section of our program. Thank you to all of our speakers. You have given us so many perspectives to think about, and it prepares us for our breakout sessions now. We all need to put our shoulders to this wheel, our mental shoulders to this wheel. So we're now going to go into dialogue sessions, and participants will be assigned into 3 groups. Each group will be working on one question. Each group will have 20 minutes, and we're asking you to agree on 2 key insights and 1 to 2 recommendations to bring back to plenary. And GCP team members will be in your groups to support you. Group 1 is going to look at promising practices and why they're promising. Group 2 is going to investigate barriers to progress and scaling. And Group 3 is going to investigate the potential role of GCP to support this. So we'll now break out into our groups, and you'll get a 3-minute warning before we come back to plenary. I wish you all good luck, and we'll be very excited to hear what people have to say. Now we will do a quick round. Each of our 3 rapporteurs will report on 1 to 2 insights plus 1 to 2 recommendations that our groups made. And I'd like to open this round with Group 1, Promising Practices, and our rapporteur, Jeremy Lefroy.
Thanks very much, Mary. We had a very good and fruitful discussion. If we take the soil, water quality and biodiversity together, the practices that we've seen, that we heard from our members as having considerable promise, were firstly soil analysis, so much more soil analysis which is accessible to all farmers, including small farmers. This also would go at a much greater depth than normal. So typically soil analysis has been done up to 20 centimeters, but Bruno said that in Brazil, they were doing it up to 60 centimeters, and that was very, very important. The practices that they've seen as a result to help improve soil were the use of biochar, organic matter, obviously, and compost, although it was pointed out that composting can be difficult. It depends on availability of the organic matter. Vermicomposting and also cover crops. This was something brought out by several of our contributors, including Bruno, Francesca, and David. It's the idea of cover crops obviously is both as a means of reducing soil temperature, producing more organic matter, but also helping to fix nitrogen and indeed improve food security if you're talking about crops such as beans. One point that Bruno made is the consequence of soil analysis is the avoiding overuse of fertilizer. So it helps reduce costs, which impacts on farmer livelihoods positively. And also the perspective of increasing the root length of the coffee. We then had some comments on reducing the use of pesticides from our colleague from Touton on using biopesticides, using traps, and indeed using better coffee varieties. We heard also about, and I know I'm coming up to my time, but on intercropping. And in terms of farmer prosperity, there was the conversation we started about living income benchmarks. That's obviously a more complicated area, but also the introduction of other crops or other means of income, particularly highlighted were beekeeping, and again, intercropping of crops like legumes, beans, and so on. Mary, I think that's my time up.
Thank you, Jeremy. So we've heard about promising practices and why. And now I'd like to invite my GCP colleague, Gabriel Chavez, to tell us about barriers to progress discovered by Group 2 and ways some of those barriers might be unlocked. Gabriel.
Very much, Mary. Yeah, well, on Group 2, we explored the barriers to scaling RegenCoffee and what could help unlock progress. So the group can identify two main barriers. The first one is the lack of robust evidence and practical measurement at farm level. So there's still no clear applicable way to measure the impact of regenerative practices in coffee systems, sometimes due to the complexity of indicators, for instance, how to measure carbon sequestration at farm level, how to measure soil health, and limited baseline data. The second one is the fragmentation and limited technical capacity across the sector. We have multiple organizations developing their own approaches, creating overlap and confusion for farmers and the sector as well. At the same time, there is a lack of aligned common instructions, so to say, and we also identify limited agronomic expertise on the ground. To sort this out, we kind of explore to unlocking ideas which are strengthen traceability as a foundation for impact and alignment, quite similar to the way we are supporting UDR with better data collection, clearer accountability, and more target implementation of regenerative practices. The second one is invest in agronomic capacities and knowledge transfer. So we're discussing to be very aware of the coming generations of agronomists, which are going to carry on their shoulders the placing in field of the reg practices. So
very important.
That's overall, I guess the group highlighted the challenge is not only defining the practices for RegenCoffee, but making them measurable, practical, and supported by a really good team at farm level.
And that's how we unlock a lot of the barriers to progress. Thank you, Gabrielle, in Group 2. And now let's hear from Group 3. My colleague Liza Rosen is going to let us know about ideas for the role of GCP and country platforms moving forward in RegenCoffee. Liza, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mary. Yes, so we identified some key insights, including that there is actually a good deal of funding coming for the sector and a recognition of the issues that the sector is facing. But with that, there's also the opportunity for greenwashing and a strong need for better coordination around and agreement on the investment need and how to measure the changes that result from those investments. We felt, in terms of recommendations, our group brought forward a few different ideas around how GCP can help with alignment that unlocks funding. So we talked about, can GCP play a role in coordinating some of those large investments and directing those large investments to the places where they're needed, and maybe even bringing some sort of oversight and evaluation regarding the investments themselves, or what programs might be investment ready. We also talked about national contextualization of the recommendations and how important it is to better understand what's needed in different contexts. And we talked about transparency around Regen Ag and how to better measure the outcomes that result from Regen Ag. So could GCP play a role in ensuring that what Regen Ag is or isn't is credibly understood and transparently understood by the sector, but also the changes that result from Regen Ag practices, could we bring some credibility and transparency around those measures?
Thank you. Thank you, Liza. Thank you, Group 3. So we're hearing that GCP RegenCoffee has a lot to say, and our meeting is important, and our perspectives are needed. And this gives me a beautiful opportunity to introduce my colleague, Lauren Weiss, who is going to talk about the survey that we're going to be sending to you tomorrow, asking for your further input. Lauren?
Yes, thank you, Mary. If we can, there we go with the slide. So we are very happy you've all spent almost 75 minutes with us today, but we would very much like to continue the conversation. So please look out in your email inboxes tomorrow, or if your phone is ready, you have a QR code in front of you to take a very quick survey to talk a bit more on what you see as some of the priorities, barriers, and opportunities for working together and helping the sector advance on this transition. It will be very quick, about 3 minutes, and it is optional if you want to include your contact information. Otherwise, we are very happy for you to share your responses anonymously as well. You will have about a week, and we thank you in advance for your participation. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mary.
Lauren, thank you. Shaping our strategy and sharing information going forward go hand in hand. So we do want to thank you for being with us today. And let's reiterate that RegenCoffee practices support farmer prosperity, ecosystem resilience, and stable coffee supply. And our RegenCoffee guidance is a shared language to bring us clarity, alignment, and it's a call to action. Country platforms can play a key role with us. And we've got wonderful GCP10 events coming up. Please see the slide and take a look at all of these excellent learning dialogue and knowledge building opportunities that we're offering strictly to GCP members to celebrate the 10th year of the Global Coffee Platform. We welcome your participation. We're shaping our coffee future together. And this is a powerful opportunity. And we want to thank everyone for being with us today. We want to especially thank our sponsors, JDE, Peet's, Nestle Nescafe, and OFI. And we want to thank everyone for participating today, especially our excellent speakers. I know I've learned a lot, and I look forward to our next conversation. Please do complete the survey and reach out to us with any specific questions you might have, and we'll keep moving forward. Thank you very much for being with us.